Hey everyone, Temporal here, and for this session we are taking a look at the newly released NACE divisions. They've put up their divisions for Collegiate Overwatch. We get to see how they broke up the regions. We have 8 regions here, and we are going to be looking at them, seeing if we can tell who's going to win the regions ahead of time, seeing how balanced the regions are, going through these and seeing what we're at here. And as always, chat is open, so do feel free to pipe in there if you think I am vastly under or overrating a region or not properly respecting a school in here that maybe we haven't paid a ton of attention to before. So we'll start here with Northeast Region 1, and in Northeast Region 1, we can immediately see that the king of the region is going to be Bay State. For those that don't know, Bay State got second in NACE overall last season. They got second in NECC last season. They were, they went deep in their Activision Blizzard Collegiate run. They'd have been a top 6 school all year for Overwatch, or all semester. No big surprise there. They are going to be the winner of this region. But there are some other meaningfully good schools in here. OTSU, they didn't compete in Activision Blizzard's Collegiate tournament last season, but they were in NACE, and they came out of a Northeastern Division last season in the number 2 spot. And then we also see that we've got, I know there was another one that we saw over here, Rit Orange, who, hey, that was another solid team. Really would be hard to call who would get the number 2 spot here, but these are effectively 3 meaningful teams. Bay State with the clear win. I don't see anything here else that looks like a team that we'd really be worried about that could really take down these guys, anything like that. So these would be the 3. Okay, we've got 3 schools in the division. Let's see how the next one looks. Over here, we've got Harrisburg. Harrisburg should be able to win this division based on what we see. As we work through here for other competitive schools, and when I say competitive schools, we're looking for schools that are something in Overwatch. Like, they might be looking at that 7-3 level in the Swiss last season. They might look at the playoffs or just outside playoffs in a NACE division last year. That sort of thing. The sort of thing where, hey, these are like 4.2 plus teams roughly is what that means in Collegiate Overwatch or above, and we're taking a look at these. And as we go through here, we see New York Ultraviolets. They're a little on the weaker side for what we're sort of considering that threshold. They were 7-3, but, we're sort of looking for like good, not sort of lucked into it. I'm not saying that they did look into it, but I'd say they're on the weaker side of this threshold that we're sort of imaginarily setting here. And then as we continue to look through here, Shenandoah also a little bit on the weaker side. They were top 2 in their NACE division last season, but they pretty quickly went out. I believe they went out in 2 in playoffs, so that's not terribly surprising. They were in the weakest division where it was them and GMU, and that was really unarguably the weakest division last semester. And that's about what I see over here in terms of schools that we would expect to be competitive here. So they've got 3 schools, little bit on the weak side in terms of what we're looking at, but their top school, Harrisburg, is a big, powerful Overwatch school. Hey, they've got something here. Again, 3 reasonably good Overwatch schools in our first 2 divisions here, each of our Northeast ones. As we move on, we get over to the Midwest, and this is not a good start. NU Overwatch is Northwood. We can click through and see that if anyone is curious, but this is really all that there is here. I don't know what's going on here, but as we can see, NU is Northwood. That makes sense. Maybe we look through here to see if there's something else that we don't recognize, maybe an abbreviation that is Overwatch Varsity. What's that? UCal Red. What's that? Overwatch PFW. What's that? Okay, let's take a look at these, and we're going to see that it's Mount Vermont. Nope, that's, as far as I know, nothing in the Overwatch world. Overwatch Varsity is Trine University. No, that's not really a thing. UCal Red, University of Cincinnati. Okay, so, and then this one, Purdue University. Still, not really anything here that is a competitor. Northwood is going to win this division, get a free path through, and don't get me wrong, they would have beat things like Shenandoah or New York Ultraviolets as well. They were the last season really, you can't call them anything but the champions. They got the upsets and beat Activision Blizzard. They won against Redbirds in Activision Blizzard Collegiate. They also won the 2 third-party divisions. So hey, maybe them having a free path through is fine. I think they'd have beat most people that would have been put against them, except maybe one of the other sort of kings of last season and gotten out cleanly. But hey, they don't even have a reasonable second or third to hold up this division. So this is a pretty weak division, gotta say. Not like wildly thrilled with what we've seen for our first 3 divisions, but at least this first one had some strength behind it in OTSU and in Rit Orange. Those ones are solid. Those could work their way into the playoffs, take some people down. Those, can go 8-2, can make it into Activision, top 32, that sort of thing. Those are, reasonably good. So far, Northeast 1 is looking the strongest. Then we head into Midwest 2. And as we look at Midwest 2 here, what do we have? Well, we can see that none of these really mean anything to us. University of Minnesota Pizza Pirates, they were not in the Activision playoffs this last semester, but they were in the year before that. They made playoffs. So, hey, there's something there. Good 7-3, I believe, this last semester. Mizzou won their division. It was a weaker division. Definitely not as weak as the previously mentioned Shenandoah GMU division, but it was a weaker division. That said, they won it, and they also made it into group stages in Activision's tournament last semester. So another perfectly competitive school here. Then we see Illinois Orange. Absolutely made it into top 16 actually there, and definitely made it into group stages. Hey, another good one. They were competitive. I believe they made it into NACE playoffs last semester as well. This is looking a little more solid. And then we have Redbirds. This Redbirds will not be as strong as, this is Illinois State University. Redbirds is generally what they get called. This is the team that last semester would have had lots of OWL players on it, has had multiple of its players signed. It will not be as strong this semester, but they have used its strength in that past semester to leverage into sort of becoming a top Overwatch school, using that to sort of become a beacon and attract more talent. I can tell you that their talent is not as strong. They will not be sending 3-4 people to OWL off of this season's roster, but they are still going to be a top Overwatch school. I wouldn't necessarily go if they lose this semester, oh, it's an upset if they lose to a Maryville or a Northwood or a Bay State, but they'll be in play there. So, hey, this so far looks like a pretty good division. We have a strong enough king to wear the crown for the division. Yeah, sure, let's go like that. Draw a quick crown, why not? And then we have 3 schools backing it up behind the crown that are, reasonably challenging schools. Is Redbirds going to beat all those schools? Yes, very likely. But those 3 schools have some mix to them. Those 3 schools have some strength holding up the division. So I like that. That's good. This is the best division we've seen so far. Next, we move on to the Southeast Conference. And as we see our Southeast Conference here, we see that this is nothing. There's nothing here. There is absolutely nothing here. USF Gold. This is the strongest school in the division, as best I can tell. This is University of South Florida. And if we look at what University of South Florida did in the most recent season of Activision's tournament, they were 7-3. They lost to UW Stout, University of Toronto, and Hawaii Manoa. UW Stout and University of Toronto both made the playoffs, but those were like, it's hard to say they anything but lucked their way into the playoffs. They didn't really fight terribly challenging opponents on their way through the Swiss bracket. They got eliminated immediately. They, are going to have some level. They would be the type of school that people go, hey, the Swiss bracket 10 rounds that isn't really 10 rounds because it only reseeds every 2 rounds doesn't finely enough divide the schools. They would probably be examples of that. If people are in the chat from UW Stout or University of Toronto, hey, I'm definitely throwing some shade here, but hey, that's, that is what that is. Hawaii Manoa, again, that's sort of like UW Stout or like University of Toronto. Those are schools that could be like holding up a division if they win these NACE things. They could be like a 3rd or 4th strongest school in the division, and that would be reasonable. But again, we're talking about the school that, as best I can tell, is the strongest school in the Southeast Division, was a 7-3 school that lost to those three schools. That cannot hold up as the king of this division, as the champion of this division. This looks weak. So is there something we're missing? Is there something where, hey, well, maybe we can't recognize an abbreviation here? Who is UA Crimson? Who is OME OW Red? Who is FAU? Who is SEU Black? LSU? I have a pretty good idea of who they are. Is there someone we're missing that's actually really good at Overwatch? University of Alabama. Okay, that's something. They're not, maybe they could contend there for like challenging. Maybe they could contend to challenge University of South Florida here, but that's still not like a Northwood or a Bryant Stratton or a Redbirds or a Irvine or a Boise or anything like that. Like that really can't be the king of a division either. University of Mississippi, no, that's not going to do it. Florida Atlantic, no, not really. SEU Black, Southeastern University, I don't think so. So unless one of these are then Louisiana State University, unless one of these are just showing up with a really strong roster and like, hey, they've decided to deploy this season, they haven't been around in the Overwatch scene, they have a completely retooled roster like ISU had a completely retooled roster last semester, and now the school is serious. They went and recruited good people, did scholarships, things like that. Unless there's someone here who we don't recognize as a good school, this is going to be a very soft division. And whoever comes out of this division, probably USF Gold, would be expected to get crushed in the playoffs. I'm a little disappointed that this happened unless there's some new super school in here that we missed. And part of why I'm a little disappointed this happened is, yes, these distributions are reasonable, but we could have split up these two regions differently and had, more competitive regions, because Southeast 2 is going to be in a little bit better shape than this at least. But hey, maybe I'm wrong. If you guys know that one of these schools is actually a monster, they just put together a good program where they were out for the last year and a half, or I somehow missed them and they're actually great, definitely let me know in the comments below. And then when we move on to Southeast Conference 2, this is a good one. This is the hardest one to tell who's going to win. Bryant Stratton, Bobcats could win. Converse could win. And then GMU is a perfectly reasonable sort of third school to hold this up. GMU was a first or second in a NACE division last semester. I believe they're like a 4.2 team, I want to say. And hey, that's perfectly fine. They can hold up this division as a third team. This isn't like a super strong, amazing, oh my goodness, wow division, but this looks pretty reasonable. And so far, it would be the hardest to tell who is going to win. GMU is a B team. Oh, this is GMU's B team? This isn't the A team? If this is GMU's B team, then this is nothing. Or do you mean GMU is a B team in terms of your tier ranking of teams? We're like, hey, they're a 7-3 level type team, and that's what you'd consider a B team. You'd have to let me know. But if you mean, Zap Pat, that's their B team, this will not hold up, and we've really only got two schools in this division, and then both of these divisions look pretty weak, but at least this is undecided, and it would be much more interesting if you had, say, Bryant Stratton win this division and Converse win this division. It wouldn't be more interesting, but it would be much better playoffs. It would make the playoffs have more integrity. Oh, this is GMU's JV. Yeah, so that's disappointing because that means both of these divisions are pretty darn weak then, but at least this division has an interest in, hey, we don't know who's gonna win it necessarily here. So at least there's that going on. We've got the, hey, this is what we're looking at. And I don't mean to throw too much like, oh my goodness, there's only 3 or 4 or 2 good teams in each division. That's standard. Like most of these teams, just like most regional leagues, if you played high school leagues or anything like that, are going to have a couple good schools, and the most really aren't players in the next level up. And we're looking forward towards the playoffs here. So I don't mean to be like, oh my goodness, all these schools are terrible. It's just the lens that we're looking at this from is a hyper competitive one. So this will be interesting to see who wins. Looks like we're taking GMU off of our list of interesting schools here. And again, the reason I don't know some of this stuff ahead of time, guys, is I can't actually cross-reference rosters on these because we've been given, rather than battle tags, we've been given player names, which player names mostly don't mean anything to me unless I've worked with that player before. So apologies there for not having slightly better prepared information. Okay, so next we move on here to our South Conference. And in our South Conference, we've got a couple interesting ones. We can see in our South Conference that we have UTD. We would expect UTD to win. They were a top school last season. They, got a nice upset in the middle part of the season. Had another upset turn against them, unfortunately, at the end of the season and went down to UC Irvine. But they were consistently a very good school. We'd have been considering them one of the Big Six. Maybe after that UCI thing, they drop a little bit, but they're reasonable to be king of their division. They aren't dragging their division down. In terms of other relevant schools in here, we see UNT, fine. University of North Texas, they made group stages in Activision's tournament, solid. They were the second school to get through because they were in the same division as UT Dallas last season in NACE, and they beat everyone except Dallas. So hey, that makes sense. Other things that we would look at in here would be GCU. GCU, fine. GCU works. It's sort of like, hey, this can be a third or fourth support school for the strength of a division. OU Crimson, another one, hey, they can absolutely work as a third, fourth place support for this school, for this region. That makes sense. They could make some moves. I don't believe they made it into group stages, but I would not be surprised if they'd made it into group stages last season. They were just on the outside if they missed, and they're reasonably strong. They're, perfectly good enough to be competing in here as the third or fourth best school in the region. Hey, maybe they'll even throw in an upset and show UNT, no, we can take you. That wouldn't actually be wild. So we see this. Hey, 4 schools in this one. Stronger. We like that. This is looking like one of the better ones. And then we're going to go ahead and move on to West. And West is going to cover a lot of territory here. But we look at this and we see UCI. And UCI has to be crowned our king basically immediately here. Again, they finished top 4 in Activision's tournament last semester. They just had the California tournament that they went to with a bunch of other collegiate teams, and they were the king of that as well. Obviously, that wouldn't have included schools like Boise State, but they're the king of California. They also have that good top 4 finish. They have a legacy of top 4 finish last season as well, though that one was a little bit more bracket luck in how they passed in there. Not last season, but last year. Last season, they had to go through real schools to get there, so absolutely good on them. They're the king of this division. That's not really questioned. Boise's fallen off a little bit, I'd say, in the last season. Legacy-wise, they're very good, but they were still top 16 last season. Still very good. Absolutely one of the stronger second-place schools for one of these regions here, so this is looking pretty good. Then we fall off a bit meaningfully in this division, but we still do have some schools that are, it's a pretty big fall off after Boise State, because Boise State could pretty easily win some of these other divisions potentially, but we see in here that we do still have USC as well as Cal. Those aren't amazing Overwatch schools, but those are 7-3 level Overwatch schools if you were to look at last season's Swiss, and that's about where you would have expected them to land in there as well. So reasonably good hold up there for that 3rd and 4th place. Bit weaker than the hold up that we might have seen in here for 3rd and 4th place schools. Bit weaker than the hold up we might have seen from like a 3rd place school over here, but reasonably good. So then from there, we're going to go ahead and do some ranking. If we look at this, how can we rank these schools? We've now seen enough to go, hey, we've been through these, we see what's in here. This is similar to last semester. This is not some like, oh, now these teams are incredibly weak type thing or anything like that. I don't mean to give that impression. We're just looking for what's strong, what's weak. And I think we know pretty much immediately where our 8th place is going to go. And our 8th place, let's just do this with, let's do some heat mapping here. Our 8th place has to go to this Southeast one. There's just nothing there. Like, hey, USF, you can win it, but like in most regions, in most divisions, you'd be like a 3rd or a 4th place school. So that's just not going to work. This has to be our weakest region. Okay, so what else is our next weakest region obvious to us? Is that something that we can go, hey, let's just place this definitively? And I think the answer is gonna be yeah, we probably can. Northwood is great, don't get me wrong. I have no issue with Northwood, but there's nothing else supporting this region. And Northwood is appropriate to be a king of a region here, but there's no good second, third, or fourth school to sort of back this out and give this region any strength. Northwood's just getting a free pass. Maybe it's fair they're getting a free pass because, again, they won it last season. I don't actually have nearly as much complaint about our number 7 region as I do our number 8 region here, but hey, not going to deny that it is what it is there. So now let's flip over to the other side and say, what is the strongest region? Do we have something that is for sure strong? And I think we do. I think if we look at these, we can see that it's going to be Midwest 2. I'm pretty happy with what I see in Midwest 2 here. Again, we've got the Redbirds. They won't be as strong as they were last season, but they'll still be very good. We've got Illinois Orange. We've got Mizzou. We've got Minnesota. That's a good, strong division. I'm pretty happy with that. Oh, I just marked that as number 2, didn't I? Minor detail. Midwest 2, strongest region. Sorry about that, guys. So we're going to call this, oh, that's a little bit bigger of a writing utensil than we wanted. We're going to call this the toughest region here. And even though I do not expect that Redbirds are the strongest school, I think the totality of strength of the region makes this the most competitive, most interesting region. If we're just going on, hey, what's the single strongest one? We'd probably go over here and we'd go, okay, based on everything we know, maybe we lean towards Northwood here because they won it last season. Yes, some schools have changed their rosters. We know Redbirds is weaker. We don't have Maryville in here to look at. A couple other things. We could maybe make some arguments elsewhere, but I think we'd go, hey, if it's just the single strongest school, we'd put this here. We're not doing that. We're looking a little more totality-wise. So then what's the next strongest school? Or what's the next strongest region here? Because we did 8, we did 7. It's only fair that we do 2 next. And I'm actually going to go south. I am actually going to go down here to the South region and say that it is this one. We've got University of Texas, Dallas. We've got UNT. We've got OU Crimson. And we have GCU there. That's perfectly solid. Again, we have 4 relevant schools. We have a reasonably strong King school there as long as they bounce back. Maybe not if they don't bounce back. Maybe this would fall if UTD sort of continues their little bit of downward spiral that they had at the very end of the last season. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and put this as number 2. And for number 3, really not very far behind it at all, I'm going to put the West here. And maybe this is revenge for, hey, I called the West out a little weak in my last collegiate coverage video. And obviously, I don't actually think all the schools in the West are weak. I just think that when we're looking at it, there's more strong schools in the East than the West. That said, when we get a big Western coverage like this, which is being well done by NACE here, we see, again, we've got UCI, we've got Boise, we have ourselves Cal, as well as USC. That's going to be enough. You know, those 3rd and 4th aren't terribly strong, but Irvine, plenty strong enough. Boise, plenty strong enough behind it. 4 relevant schools, even if there's almost no chance that the 3rd or 4th school will take down the 2nd school, let alone the 1st school. Hey, we'll still go with that. This looks stronger than some of the other regions that we've seen. So that brings us to region number 4 in terms of strength. And I think that's going to be pretty easy as well. Not too hard for me to parse here. I'm going to go ahead and put that as, maybe we draw that a little cleaner. I'm going to put that as Northeast 1 over here. And again, we've got Bay State as the king of this region, perfectly reasonable king. Red Orange, OTSU, really a little tough to call who's going to get 2nd place out of those. So we're really close to each other, 2nd and 3rd, but we've really only got 3 schools that are interesting, that are sort of above our threshold of competitive in the collegiate Overwatch scene, you know, potential top 32 type schools, that sort of thing. So now things get a little bit harder. because we've done the odd man's out, the clearly weak ones. We've done some of the pretty good, strong ones. So what are like the middle of the table ones? Maybe we'll use a third color for middle of the table. And we've really only got 2 left, and we have some decisions to make. We've got up here Harrisburg, who, that's an appropriate king school. We've got New York Ultraviolets, and then we've got Shenandoah, and those are in our reasonable uphold support schools in terms of like, hey, these can support a division, but I'd honestly say a little bit on the weaker side. Yes, even knowing that Shenandoah got 2nd place in their division, in their NACE division last season, I would say these are a little bit on the weak side for support schools, but they can work. Whereas over in the Southeast Conference, we have 2 pretty good schools in Bryant Stratton and Converse. Those are solid. Bryant Stratton didn't compete in Activision Blizzard Collegiate last season, but did quite well here. We can actually take a look at how they did. I'm not going to wipe this out, so you guys will just have to see. And we can see, let's take a look and see that... let's take a look and see if we can find them. We're looking for Converse and we're looking for Bryant Stratton. Converse went out, got knocked down by Bay State. Okay, no real shame in that. They even got themselves a map off Bay State. And Bryant Stratton, as soon as we find them, they had to come out of a tough division. They also got knocked down by Bay State, not taking a map. I don't really care about taking a single map there. And we can see that ultimately Converse got eliminated in a close loss against UTD there. So maybe I am starting to care about maps. Whereas Bryant Stratton went out a round earlier, but down to Harrisburg, and there's not really any shame in losing to Harrisburg either there. So Converse maybe looks a little bit stronger there. Ooh, I didn't really mean to do that. Converse maybe looks a little bit stronger there, but I think this is the most contested who's going to win it division of the 3 here. That said, given that there's no third school here, I am going to go ahead and say that let's mark this as our 5th strongest division, just off the fact that we've got 3 relevant schools here and a strong enough king, whereas I'm going to mark this as the 6th strongest division. Again, I think it'll be the most interesting to go, hey, who wins? Like, that match will certainly be the most interesting in its week. And again, when they play for their play-ins between the 2 of them, that'll be the most interesting, I think, of anything that we really see here. But the strength of the division as a whole isn't really going to keep up there. So I look at it, I'm pretty comfortable with these rankings. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. If you're enjoying this sort of content, please do drop a like, consider subscribing. If you'd like to see more collegiate content like this, definitely do let me know. And for now, we're going to go ahead and call it there, unless people have stuff to throw up in chat. I'll give you guys just a second there. Any thoughts? Anyone think I've wildly underestimated a school or missed a school that they know is new on the scene and super powerful? I don't think so. We'll call it there. Thanks.